As Valorant has continued to grow over the years, they've added more and more duelists into the game, and some of you might be wondering, what is the difference between picking a Reyna versus picking a Raze? Are all of the duelists really created equal? Does it just depend on the map? Well, it might surprise you to hear that no, they are not created equal, and sometimes even the smallest differences in their kit makes one duelist superior to another. They're all viable, and actually are all pretty good right now, but you gotta know when to pick them. That's exactly what we're going over today. We're going to be breaking down every duelist and what makes them unique, and how exactly you want to be using these differences to your advantage so that you can win more games. Now keep in mind that duelists are fighters, and if you want to play them, you've got to feel comfortable in the ring. Come to think of it though, for some of you that might sound kind of scary. Maybe you aren't really the fighting type, but you still like the feel of some of the duelists and you want to give them a shot. Well, the good news is that everyone is capable of achieving good aim. 15 years ago, a lot of people just thought that good aim was a genetics thing, but that's been pretty debunked. There are correct things to be doing when you're aiming and incorrect things that every player should be practicing. That's exactly what we cover in our hour-long masterclass over at SkillCapped, where we teach you everything that you need to know about aiming so that you can stop looking like this and start looking like this. Listen, I'm not going to turn you into 10s, but we can get your aim to an immortal level so that you can start competing against some of the best players in the game. And the best part is that we'll do it for pretty cheap. Some coaches out there are charging literally 4 figures just to get you out of bronze. Don't waste your money on that. We've got all that you need right here, and the best part is we offer a rank improvement guarantee, so if you don't climb, you don't pay. Check it out using the link below for a discount today, and other than that, let's get into the video. For starters, we need to first classify the 2 different types of duelists for players to understand. The first type of duelists are entry duelists. These guys are going to have some form of movement to help give them an advantage when getting out of choke points onto the map. Choke points are really dangerous for executes because they are really susceptible to things like mollies, slows, nades, and other utility that can stop a push. Entry duelists excel at leading the charge past that choke point and onto site by using their movement utility to quickly cross that gap. The entry duelists that we're going to be talking about today are Jett, Raze, Yoru, and Neon. On the other end of the spectrum, we have brawlers. Now, brawlers don't traditionally have movement abilities to help them clear that choke point. However, what they lack in that movement, they make up for in sheer fighting power. They have utility that makes them dangerous targets to fight for one reason or another. Our brawlers are going to be Fenix, ISO, and Raina. For these agents, things like Fenix's flash or ult, ISO's shield, or Raina's dismiss are all very powerful. All of these things can make fighting them really not favorable. Now, it's worth mentioning that when we talk about these agents, many abilities might be similar, and just because we have separated them into 2 different types doesn't mean that there aren't going to be any crossovers between brawlers and entry duelists. The game is really dynamic, and this is just intended to be a more simplified way of understanding them. Now, starting out with our entry duelists, we've got to talk about Jett. Jett is basically the face of Valorant, and easily one of the star duelists in the game. Over time, her place in the meta has fallen slightly, but she still remains an incredibly strong pick for duelist. Now, the main value that Jett provides to a team comes from her dash. While all entry duelists have movement abilities, they don't all function in the same way, and Jett's is by far the best on-demand piece of movement utility. You press the button once to charge it up, and then when you are ready, you immediately move in that direction super fast. Faster than a Raze satchel, faster than a Yoru TP, and covering more distance than a Neon slide without having to get a running start first. That's what makes Jett so strong. This ability is just on demand and highly impactful. On top of this, it's actually multi-purpose. While Jett can use this ability to entry effectively, she can also use it to dismiss incredibly effectively as well, just like how a Raina might. This is part of the crossover that we were talking about. While Jett is excellent at getting her team out of a choke point, she also is frustrating to push into because she can just post up anywhere with a rifle or even an operator, take a shot, and then quickly dash away unscathed. Not every duelist can do this. Compare Jett to an ISO, for example. Sure, he's got a shield, but if he's caught in the open, it's likely that he's going to get traded still. For this reason, Jett's just really versatile. She's tough to push into, she's also tough to defend against, because she can dash past your defense. Not to mention, on top of her dash, Jett's got her updraft to make her extra slippery. Many players nowadays basically use Jett's updraft as a secondary form of escape. You're in trouble, updraft and try to use that movement to make yourself harder to hit as you escape. It's a nice touch and works incredibly well. On top of this, the other things that she brings to the table are her smokes. Jett's smokes give her the protection that she needs when she's dashing onto site to not just die instantly. Good Jett players will smoke and then dash into the smoke and wait for the right time to strike, oftentimes using even their second smoke to buy even more time for their teammates to come out. This double smoke technique causes the pressure of them being on site to linger and forces the defenders to make a decision on, do we pre-aim the Jett on site or do we focus on our teammates running in? It's a tough decision and part of what makes Jett so strong. Finally, Jett's ultimate is incredibly powerful in the right hands. Many people may not know this, but your rifle actually isn't 100% accurate at really any range. Your bullets don't always go exactly where you're aiming. This means that even if you're on target, you might still miss. That's not the case with Jett's knives. She only gets a few, but they are 100% accurate. While jumping, while moving, while standing still, it doesn't matter. They're incredibly deadly and can be used to snowball rounds that your team has no business winning. On top of this, while using knives, Jett is much faster, and as mentioned, can jump and make herself really difficult to hit. Fighting a Jett with knives sucks, and that's part of what makes her so strong. Now, after describing her abilities though, what does that mean for Jett players? On offense, your life before the execute is very valuable because you're the person who's supposed to get your team out of that choke point. This means that you want your team to use things like drones and flashes to help you scale up towards the choke so that when the time comes, you are actually alive to dash out. Keep in mind that from all the things that we pointed out, Jett doesn't have great scaling utility. A Fenix can flash an angle to help keep himself safe, but Jett doesn't have that sort of thing. This means that if she dies before being able to dash and take space, it's incredibly detrimental to her team. While playing Jett, you also want to keep an eye out for opportunities to dash off of your teammate's utility. Things like Breach's stun and KO's flash can be really effective to set you up for kills when placed well. If you notice that a piece of utility has hit the enemy team, you could quickly dash to close that gap before the effect fades. This is part of the reason that Jett pairs so well with initiators, because as Breach, if you flash the target from afar, oftentimes you just don't have the speed to close that gap before it fades. Because Jett can close that gap so quickly though, it makes her one of the best duelists in the game when paired with a good initiator. Finally, on defense, while you pair so well with initiators for making plays, Jett is also very good at picking up high value angles safely due to her ability to dash out of danger when needed. This means that oftentimes teams will use their initiator to set up Jett on a valuable sightline and afterwards leave her there alone while they rotate out to help the rest of their team. Think of things like Pearl B Long. Jett can post up with an operator at the start of the round, take a shot, and then use her dash to safely escape without risking much. Stuff like this makes it harder for the attackers to scale up safely, knowing that every angle they peek could be contested by the enemy Jett. Just the thought of this will force the enemy team to use utility for taking map control, which would otherwise be utility that they use for taking site. As you would imagine, if Jett's dash is available for retake, she functions similar to how she might on attack. Otherwise, she just looks to lead her team in natty style, just using herself as a meat shield. A Jett without a dash isn't super valuable, so the second best thing that she can do is get traded. This is going to be a common theme for most of the duelists. They're oftentimes the best ones to die, since their utility doesn't provide too much value in a post-plant scenario. Now moving on to Raze. Raze is similar to Jett in some regards. What she lacks in a dash though, she makes up for with not one, but two satchels. This ability is incredibly versatile. You can use it to swing angles, you can use it to entry, you can use both of them to go even further, you can use it to bump enemy players and throw off their aim, and you can use it to destroy utility or even use it to escape. The only difference between satchels and a Jett dash is that they're not quite as on demand, and they're also a little slower in travel speed. Now this difference is small but important. It's part of what makes Raze a worse operator user than Jett. She can't just post up, take a shot, and dash away in the same way. She's got to turn afterwards and satchel, which while that might still be pretty fast to do, it's not quite as fast. It's worth mentioning though that Raze can definitely cover more distance than Jett with her satchels. This makes her also an excellent choice for getting her team out of that choke point and capitalizing on her initiator's utility. Speaking of which, this is another reason that Raze just isn't the best choice for opping, and it's because she has a lot of great utility. It's actually kind of unique to the duelist role, but Raze's abilities are actually incredibly impactful. Raze really loves those close quarters claustrophobic maps where she can get the maximum value out of her paint shells and ultimate. On these maps, Boombot can be used for information as well to help herself and her team scale up. You don't really want an operator in the hands of somebody who's going to be constantly pulling out their utility and fighting. Not to say she's horrible at it, she's just not the best. Now Raze is one of the best combo duelists in the game. Due to how deadly her paint shells and showstopper are, Raze pairs incredibly well with agents like Breach, Fade, Deadlock, and even stuff like an Omen who can disorient the enemy team as she's flying at them with her rocket. While we've all seen clips of Raze's completely whiffing the rocket, it's important to note that Showstopper is one of the best space-taking abilities in the game still. It just demands respect, and if you challenge it, best case scenario is that you'll probably come out with a trade. People just hear that rocket and they run away. Nobody wants to die to it. For this reason, on offense, Raze is very powerful at taking space. She's got that utility to flush angles, she's got her movement to get out of the choke, and she's got her ultimate to back it all up. On defense though, she's equally as powerful. While they don't last as long as a molly, paint shells can be a very deadly tool when stopping a push and even comboing with trap setups at the start of rounds. Not to mention that if you're uncertain about enemy positions during the mid round, having a boombot to safely scout for info is really valuable. Pretty much every other duelist is going to have to face check and risk their life to gather information, but Raze could just let her util do all the work for her. So while I'd love to point out some of the weaknesses for Raze, there really aren't a ton. She's an incredibly well-rounded duelist, and really the only thing that holds her back is that she's not exactly a brawler type like ISO, Fenix, or Reyna, as well as the fact that she's just not quite as fast as a Jett or a Neon. But what she lacks in those areas, she just makes up for with an incredibly well-rounded kit. Next up though, let's talk about Yoru. Now, though we're considering Yoru an entry duelist, he's also someone who's in a bit of a weird spot. He's almost like an initiator in many ways. His decoy can be used similar to Raze's boombot at times to gather information. His ultimate is essentially just a drone that lets you reposition, and his flashes are actually long enough range where you can be a bit more supportive for your team. But it's still worth noting that Yoru's Gatecrash can be an excellent entry tool when used intelligently. By sending Gatecrash to locations on site that are likely to be undefended, Yoru can safely TP out, similar to how a Jett might dash onto site or how a Raze might satchel out for her team. There is one caveat though. The teleport has to travel forward first, and it's only slightly faster than a player, which means that a lot of Yoru's entries require a small amount of preparation, which kinda sucks. If Raze is slightly slower than Jett, Yoru is significantly slower, which can make him less reliable as an entry. On top of this, Yoru's Gatecrash can be destroyed, so if there's a player who sees it, they can instantly deny that entry by breaking it. As well as if Gatecrash travels over a molly, it oftentimes just breaks instantly, which is something that Jett and Raze just don't have to deal with. So while Yoru can entry you using his Gatecrash, it's not always ideal. That being said, there is a lot of value in just appearing in a location. He doesn't have to dash forward and expose himself, he could just teleport in and the enemies won't have a chance to punish it if it's a good TP, instantly providing pressure. We of course haven't even mentioned Yoru's ultimate, which can be used as entry as well, clearing out the entire site, calling out enemy locations, and even throwing flashes to support your teammates as they scale. This is part of what makes Yoru basically an initiator. Yoru's ult is incredibly strong as an entry tool, and it's kind of where Yoru gains a lot of points. And don't forget that while we're downplaying Yoru's Gatecrash, it is an excellent tool for repositioning defensively. Yoru can throw a Gatecrash out while holding an angle, and similar to Jett, after taking a shot, pretty much instantly teleport and reposition across the map even. This makes playing into Yoru on defense really frustrating. You can't ever really lock down where he is. One moment he could be B, and the next moment he could be back A. He just moves around so quickly, and while his TP isn't as fast as a Jett dash or a Raina dismiss, it still is pretty damn good, and as long as you are playing near cover, you can oftentimes get away with using this as an escape. Also, a small little tip to Yoru players to make their TP even more effective is before activating it, jump and then TP while you're in the air. This will make it a lot harder to hit you, so that if you are in danger, you are more likely to get body shot instead of headshot. Now, Yoru is similar to Raze in many ways, where his kit is just so powerful. He's got two great flashes that he can use for himself or his teammates. There's also a bunch of random lineups that you can do to basically make this flash undodgeable or into a one-way flash. And he's also got a bunch of great repositioning tools. The icing on the cake is that his decoy can even be used to break things like tripwires, Vice's wall, Killjoy's alarm bot, or other things in the game like that. Yoru's just good. He's a great support, he's a great fighter, he's a great opper, he's just good. Finally though, for our last entry duelist, we have Neon. Neon is a bit unique in the entry department because her movement ability isn't great. While Jett and Raze can go over mollies and Yoru can just run through them with his ultimate, or TP past them if he gets his Gatecrash out, Neon can't. She kind of just has to run through them, and her slide doesn't go super far, so she really doesn't break that choke point too much. She's not horrible as an entry and definitely still works, but compared to Jett, Raze, and Yoru, she's not great at beating that molly. That being said, Neon is still the fastest duelist in the game. This means that she can capitalize on things like Breach or KO's utility from really far away. Stun comes in, Neon sprints and slides, and you've got yourself a few kills starting from maybe 10 or 15 meters away. That's pretty crazy. Being able to do things quickly in Valorant can be a really big deal because everyone has that internal clock of how long things should take. How long it takes to rotate or how long it takes to close the gap. Neon breaks these timers and makes it difficult to play against her. At a sacrifice though, that makes Neon a bit less good as a defender. Neon can rotate quickly, but she can't op the same way that a Jett does, where she gets to take that shot and dash away. Neon needs momentum to do things, which means that she's really good at moving forward, in fact, the best at it, but she's not good at disengaging instantly. Luckily, the rest of Neon's kit really complements this playstyle. Her fast lane makes it really difficult to stop her from getting out onto site. She basically smokes off every angle that you could be playing from, so that when that flash does come in from her team, she's already scaled up onto you. And then her stun can be used from a far distance to prevent enemies from swinging her as she's scaling up. You guys get the idea. Neon really favors going fast. She wants to close that gap quickly, and she's the best at it, but if she's not abusing that movement speed to the fullest, she's not so versatile as the other entries. She doesn't have the option of going over a molly or running through it, so if she gets stuffed, she's kind of stuck. Now, switching gears though, we're going to be talking about our brawlers in the game. These guys aren't exactly the best entries. They can't clear a choke point insanely well, but what they lack in movement, they make up for in raw fighting power. In a one-on-one duel versus Neon, if she's not sliding on me, she's not particularly dangerous. It's just the same as any other duel. However, versus an ISO, his shield makes him really scary to fight. That's what these brawlers do best. They want to force you to fight for everything. ISO's shield turns a normal 50-50 duel into easily a 60-40, probably even a 70-30 in favor of the ISO, depending on the player's skill. Now that's crazy. ISO is great at fighting. However, he's really vulnerable to stall utility. If you're able to deal with that shield, he doesn't really have much else left. Now, of course, ISO still does have his ways of entering. It's not just running at the enemy team. His shield wall contingency is actually pretty effective for scaling up, as it makes it kind of difficult for the defenders to hold the angle. And his undercut actually has a decent amount of combo potential, making him a really good choice for teams running Sova, Raze, or even probably Teo after his launch. However, the vulnerability effect has proven to not be a super great tool to dissuade the enemy team from fighting as time has gone on, so it's not incredibly good as a dueling tool, but it is decent for combos. Finally, something that really works in ISO's favor is his ultimate. Being able to pull somebody off the map into the gulag is really powerful if used well. You want to use this ultimate on players who are in positions that your team could collapse on during it. Lots of ISO players mess this up by just ulting somebody off the rip right as the round starts, or by ulting players in positions that your teammates could just never close the gap on. The reason that this is important is because you still have a chance to lose that duel, but you want to guarantee that if you do lose it, that your team is going to still kill that player. If your teammates can close the gap on them, they can land that trade easily when your opponent gets out of the shadow round. With this in mind, ISO's ultimate is pretty much either a free kill, or at the worst, a guaranteed trade if you use it well, which is really freaking awesome. Not to mention the mind games involved when you have it. When ISO's ultimate is available for the enemy team, they don't really want to play too close to sight, otherwise they might just get traded out at best. This sucks, and it perfectly encapsulates what makes a good brawler. For the most part, you just don't want to fight ISO. You just don't. Next up, we've got Reyna, who is a little bit different. She doesn't have an inherent advantage in gunfights really, but her dismiss means that she wants to fight and fight and fight and challenge you at every single angle. A good Reyna is not going to let you feel like any part of the map is free for the taking. She's going to kill your teammate and dismiss away, and there's not a lot that you can do about it if you're not careful with your utility. Not to mention that there actually is an instance when Reyna is more powerful than the enemy. Due to her heal, if you're able to fight a Reyna on pistol round and she's able to full heal off of you, you unironically just screw over the rest of your team. On pistol round, having 150 health is not something that most agents can do. It can take a lot of pistol shots to kill a player with this much health. For this reason, Reyna is arguably one of the best agents in the game on pistol round. That heal is no joke. This of course isn't completely pointless in other rounds though. Reyna's ultimate means that during an ult round, you're almost always going to be fighting her at full health, which can really suck. A lot of the time, trades don't come instantly. You might have a body shot Barry on your team who's looking to land the trade, and suddenly Reyna is dismissing away and full healing. This means that she is going to be fighting you at full strength, which can oftentimes snowball round. You could be one bullet off of killing her, and suddenly she's healing back up and repositioning. That's what makes Reyna a good brawler. You can duel her, and you might even be on the same playing field, but if you lose that duel, it's very likely that a trade is not coming in. One last thing that Reyna has to her benefit as well is of course her leer. This is her entry ability, and it's a decent flash that the enemy team has to shoot. It combos well with other utility from your teammates, and it can be used to help your team get out onto site. If Reyna lands a pick or an assist on that entry, she can of course use her dismiss to go even further onto site into cover, but up until that point, Reyna, the same as our other brawlers, is very susceptible to mollies. Those are always going to be the weakness versus these guys. They just have to walk out of that choke point the same way that everybody else on the team does. Finally, we've got Fenix. Fenix was the original brawler of Valorant and is actually a really solid agent. His flashes are pretty much undodgeable if thrown well, and his ultimate, similar to ISO's, is just something that you don't want to fight. At 6 ult orbs, he's going to be running at you a lot, and unless you have mollies or you're able to play off of your teammates strategically, it can be tough to stop him from just taking all of that space for free. A recent change too that made Fenix that much better is his ability to heal while moving. It's a small change that really impacts his gameplay a ton. Similar to Reyna, he's going to be pretty healthy when you fight him for most of the time, and due to his flashes, he's just going to be in your face a lot. Now, what Fenix brings to the table in fighting power, he does lack in some areas. For example, he's pretty predictable. If you know that a Fenix is around the corner, you can be pretty certain that a flash is coming. His molly isn't super crazy, although it is a good tool, and his wall can't always be applicable. So while he's someone that you don't really want to fight straight up, if you are able to stall out that ult effectively and not get bullied too much by him, he's fairly one-dimensional. On offense, Fenix really wants to be grabbing as many ult orbs as possible and just using that run it back as much as he can. On defense, Fenix is most successful when he's able to set up pop flashes with his team and take advantage of flash zones all around the map to make it really difficult for the enemy team to scale up. While Raina may be abusing off angles to create pressure and force the enemy team to use utility to scale, Fenix wants to mostly abuse that fear that he's going to flash around the corner at any moment. He wants to force people to play anti-flash and use utility to prevent his swing and bleed out the enemy's util so that when they get to sight, they don't have as much on the execute and for post plan. And if you struggle in ranking up with any of these duelists, then let me tell you that we can help you out today and get you back on track and climbing today. As mentioned with our brand new Calm Aim course, we can teach you everything that you need to know about how aiming has developed over the last 10 years. We'll teach you the established proper aiming technique that aim pros use to maximize their accuracy and with far less. Aiming can feel so hard at times, but we will help make it stupid simple and get you ranking up in no time or your money back. Don't forget, site subscribers also get direct access to our coaches in Discord so that you can get personalized feedback just for you. Nobody understands how to climb out a low elo more than us, trust me. So if you're looking to rank up, be sure to check out SkillCapped using the link below. And other than that, my name's Casey, and I'll catch you in the next one.